Hello, everybody. Welcome into the NBA Front Office Show. I'm Trevor Lane. You can find me on Twitter at Trevor_Lane. Sorry, call it X. I literally do this every show now, Keith. I say Twitter when I guess I have to start calling it X. You can also find me at Trevor Lane NBA over on Instagram and Threads. I think I'm just gonna forever call it Twitter, Keith.
Yeah, it's we talked about this before, I think, and it's like you said, it'll always be Staples Center. It's just always probably going to be Twitter for me.
Yeah.
It's just kind of how it is. I mean, I'm still a guy who's rocking an AOL email address for my personal email, so I just because it's what I have and it's what I've always had. So no, I do not sign into AOL anymore to check it anymore. But remember that was fun back in the day.
Yep.
So
AOL, the instant messenger and all that. That's how I learned to type as well as I did, was having to type things on instant messenger. Oh man,
then you had to put up your away message when you're
Yep.
like going to do something and
Yep.
and all that. Yeah, man. And I remember the first time I was telling my parents about my friend, and they were like, "Oh, when are we gonna meet?" And I'm like, "Oh, he lives in Nebraska." And they were like, "What? Like, how do you know someone from Nebraska?" And I was like, "Oh, he was in the like it was like a football chat room." And I was like, "Yeah, so we've been, just talking about football and stuff." And it was just my parents were like, "I don't understand this whole thing. And, that's weird. Go outside and play." I'll tell a story. Well, I'll tell it very quickly right now, just because it's funny.
I can schedule nonsense if we need to.
Yeah, I'll just say it's not that
Okay.
scheduled nonsense. But remember how you used to have to pay by the hour for AOL, and
Uh-huh.
you'd get so many free like minutes and hours?
Yeah.
When you had to pay for it one time, it was a Sunday, and I was running our own like little fantasy football league, and I logged in to pull all the stats. Then my friend was like, "Hey, let's go play basketball." We went and played basketball for like 4 hours, and I left AOL open the
Ooh.
entire time. And I came home and I was like, "Oh no!" And I was like, "Well, maybe my mom won't notice when the bill comes." Oh, she noticed, and it was not a happy day. When it switched to the unlimited plan, I don't know that we could have signed up any quicker for unlimited minutes back then.
The internet of years gone by. He's Keith Smith, by the way. You can find him on X. Look at that. Got it right. At Keith Smith NBA. Also has that handle over on Threads. I do have a Hotmail account still, Keith. I've got
Nice.
that one. So we're on the same wavelength there. But uh, there is a storm that's been coming to the
Oh
NBA.
yeah.
We've been keeping tabs on a certain hurricane that is suddenly hitting Philadelphia.
By this evening, it is in southwestern Georgia.
Jamal Murray is a liar, and I will never be a part of an organization that he's a part of again. Thank you, man.
That's right. Hurricane Harden is making landfall and hitting Philadelphia. Keith, rumor coming from Ramona Shelburne that calling Daryl Morey a liar, that was not the mountain peak. That was just the base of the mountain. He's still climbing. He's going to make life more uncomfortable on the 76ers. That is James Harden's plan. I'm almost a little bit excited. Like, I feel bad for Philadelphia. I'm a little bit excited for what's to come. Like, if calling him publicly a liar is just the start, what's coming next?
Yeah, let's keep with our little hurricane theme there. Wonderful job on our new fun little graphic, which we will use whenever there's Harden news. Now you guys know how this
Yep.
goes. We had the Simmons siren and the Kevin Cannon. Now we
Yep.
get the Hurricane Harden updates. But keeping with the hurricane theme, yeah, we're just seeing the outer bands of this storm. Right, they're just starting to roll in. Apparently, we haven't even gotten the full force of it yet, and I want to see, one of my all-time favorite NBA stories is the Andrew Bynum story, where he was at his last practice with the Cleveland Cavaliers before they traded him, and he was shooting the ball from wherever he caught it on the floor, 90 feet away. He was taking shots. Catching it with his back to the basket on a rebound, just was turning around and letting it fly from 85 feet away, like whatever it was. He shot the ball. So I'm here for it. I'm here for does Harden do that in a game? Like, that would be incredible, right? What if they put him out on the floor and he's like, pull up from the other free throw line or something like that, some crazy nonsense like that. So we'll see where this goes. But yeah, I mean, it sounds like we're just getting started with all of this.
Man, that's I'm curious about what comes next. I guess this kind of goes back to what we talked about when this whole thing first started, and that's that if James Harden does hold out, we know, I don't know if they'll go down this path, but if the 76ers want to go nuclear here, if he just no-shows at camp, which he probably won't, but if he does, they could control his basketball future indefinitely, right? If he just doesn't show up for the whole season, the 76ers could prevent him from playing basketball anywhere in the world. Well, professional basketball, anywhere in the world. And so obviously I would think, we know James Harden, he can show up, he can play, and I'm doing air quotes for podcast listeners. He could play and be well less than 100% effort and do all of that. I don't think we're actually going to get to that point. But that factor that's in the CBA, that he can't just no-show, he can't just threaten to not show up, that if he does, it doesn't really benefit him at all. That means he's got to turn to other ways to get something done and to put pressure on to get himself traded. So that means he's going to try to make life uncomfortable on the 76ers, and it's going to create a lot of drama. And his hope is that at some point the 76ers will say, it's not worth it, and just let him go.
Yeah, without a doubt. It's funny when you're saying he's going to turn to other ways. I thought you were going to say to make money. And I was like, oh, like how he's selling wine in China and apparently sold out in minutes on his appearance in China. So I was like, oh yeah, I guess he does have other business avenues. But yeah, I continue to believe none of this is going to happen before we even get to training camp and all that. He'll get traded. That's just, I generally believe that. But I also believe that with Ben Simmons, and that didn't end up happening either. So maybe I need to recalibrate my own thinking on that. But I just think teams try to avoid these kind of really awkward, awful situations for everybody involved. So we'll see. But yeah, this is gonna be fun. And I'll tell you what, if you guys donate enough, maybe we can get Jim Cantori. Like we'll hire him to go stand in Philly and do a Hurricane Harden report for us. I don't know what he charges, because it'd probably take about, 20 minutes to do. So let's see, but tweet at him, see if he'll do a Hurricane Harden report for us.
There we go.
Front office show. And then if nothing else, maybe he'll be like, what the hell are these tweets? What is this? And then maybe he'll retweet one, and that'd be funny. So
if the storm gets bad enough, I think you and I are going to have to do a show in ponchos.
Yeah, there we go. I have a couple actually, because of
I do too,
where I live. So yeah, it's living here in Florida. They're an unfortunate necessity to own at least a couple.
All right, let's talk about the Dallas Mavericks. Josh Green potentially negotiating an extension, or would like to negotiate one. What's the timeline on this getting done, Keith, and what could this look like?
Yeah, Josh Green speaking with Olgun Ulich, who covers the basketball world for ESPN Australia. He's actually a really good reporter and follow, and has more guys, including a player. I'm now blanking on his name, but he didn't transfer. He left Louisville to go play in Australia. I believe it is. Let me get it. Trenton Flowers. That's who it was.
Okay.
Yeah, he transferred from Louisville to go to. He's going to play over in Australia on I believe it's the Next Stars Path or whatever they're calling it. Anyway, but he is. Olgun Ulich is a great follow for anybody who doesn't follow him already. He gets a lot of news, and a lot of the Australian players talk to him a lot. And for those who don't know, Josh Green is he's at least part Australian. He plays, or is hoping to play, for Team Australia at the World Cup and the Olympics. And he said to him, that right now his focus is on Team Australia and what they're looking to do this summer. But he's hopeful to get a contract extension done, excuse me, with the Mavericks. His timeline on that, start of the season. That's when those things end. All of those rookie scale extension guys, that's that. If they're not done by the eve of the season starting, then that has to be delayed, and then the Mavericks would make him a restricted free agent, and they'd kind of handle it next summer. So he's one of those guys where we see right out of the gate, like we saw with Anthony Edwards, LaMelo Ball, Desmond Bane, the kind of no-brainer max or near max guys get done right away. Then the other guys, it's usually a little later into the summertime as that all starts to come together. So my guess is Dallas tries to get something done with him. Really important player, so they should be trying to get him signed.
What's a fair number? for Josh
You
Green?
know what's funny is I wrote about him for Spot Track, and now I'm gonna try to go find it because when I wrote about it, it was I want to say I said 16 million a year, which
Okay.
might honestly be a little bit light.
So kind of the Rui Hachimura range,
Yeah, in that range, yeah.
like the kind of. I mean, it's similar in terms of he's a wing. That okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, I think here it is. I've got it here. Let's go. He was I gotta find him. He was the 18th pick. I did 4 years, 70 million. So
Okay.
about 17.5 million per year. Josh Green is good. Like I don't know if Dallas kind of fell off last year, so maybe people weren't watching quite as much. But in his third year last season, started 21 games, played in 60 games total. These were his shooting splits 53, 40, 72. Or almost actually 54% if we're rounding off from the field and
Surprised the free throw
40%
percentage isn't higher.
What's that?
I'm surprised. Typically, when you hear a guy that hits over 40% from threes, the
Yeah.
free throw percentage is around 80 or so.
Yeah, low volume free throws. Only took
Okay.
94
that
all
explains it.
season long. So that's you miss one or two, and that's gonna
Mhm.
pull you in a different direction. He's also probably their best perimeter defender. On the roster now that a couple other guys have moved on. So yeah, I think Josh Green's a really good player. He's young, obviously, right? He's only going into year 4. He'll turn 23 here in November. Early on in the season. So I if I was Dallas, I would try to get something done with him.
Yeah. If they can get it done and it's on a fair price, why not? Why not? All right. Another wing to mention, Nicolas Batum, set to retire after the season. Look, the Clippers, they're not going to rely on him a ton, but I think he is just a great example, and usually the first guy that I think of when I think of players who were really good at one point and you could lean upon heavily, but then they give their career like a second wind by going to a team where they don't have to do nearly as much and they can just focus in on a few things. A lot of times that boosts their a guy like Batum used to be asked to do everything. And then there were points where he just couldn't do that anymore with Charlotte. And so his stock dropped. But then he went to the Clippers where he didn't have to do everything anymore. Instead, he could just focus on doing a few things and it had prolonged his career. I think he is just a fantastic example of how a player can add years onto their career by settling into a different role than what they were in previously.
Yeah, he was a huge part of those pretty good Blazers teams back in the day when you had Lillard and Aldridge and all those guys. Nick Batum was a huge part of that. He was regularly discussed as would he be the first guy to pull off a 5x5 where it's 5 points and in each of the 5 major categories of or I guess 5 points, 5 rebounds, 5 assists, 5 steals, and 5 blocks, because he averaged, a couple years, averaged over a block per game, averaged, generally up around 2 steals per game in those years, was always a fairly reliable double-digit scorer, could rebound, could handle the ball and pass. And I think, too, to your point, by the end in Charlotte, it looked like he was done, right? It looked like, this guy's finished. I honestly thought, the Clippers are taking a flyer on him, but he's not really going to do anything for them. And then he ended up starting over half the games he played for them his first year. This is actually going to be his 4th year with the Clippers already, which seems crazy too. But each of his time with the Clippers, 40% from 3, 40% from 3, 39% from 3 on about 4 to 4.5 attempts per game. So kind of has reestablished himself almost into like a stretch 4 kind of guy now. He's not that perimeter guy, perimeter ball handler and playmaker anymore, but still, he's been solid. But he said this run through the World Cup and next summer's Olympics, we're going to be it for him. So sounds like he's basically saying that's it for the NBA too. I'm going to play one more NBA season with the Clippers, then I'll play in the Olympics with France after that, and then that's it. He's going to retire and move on to do something else.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's been an incredible career for him, obviously. And once again, I think he's carved a path for players as they're getting older to prolong their careers by settling into some different roles. And he's not the only one to do it. Certainly a number of guys have done it, but just a good example of how that can work for a player.
And how
all right.
accepting a role, right, changes for you. If you aren't what you once were, like transitioning into that spot up, stretch 4 type player, that's huge, right? Because he's no longer, put it in my hands. I'm going to make plays off the bounce and dribble and pass and all those things. Like, that's big. And we see sometimes some guys can do that and other guys can't, right? And the guys who can't, they generally wash out of the league and that they're done. Where the guys who can adapt and adjust, they stick around for a while, like Batum. So good call.
All right. Jamal Murray and Kristaps Porzingis are out of the World Cup. It's kind of for different reasons. Porzingis, there's an injury, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But Jamal Murray wanted additional recovery time, he said he wanted to see how his body would respond playing with Team Canada after playing a long NBA season. Obviously, the Nuggets win the NBA championship, so they're playing into June, and ultimately made the decision that his body just needs more time to recover than what playing in the World Cup would give him. And so he's making that choice. From the Nuggets side of things, I'm sure they're thrilled. They're thrilled that he's going to take the extra time to rest. Team Canada, probably not quite as excited, but this is kind of what NBA fans, again, we look at, the Olympics are like the big tournament in basketball, and the World Cup is kind of the secondary one, even though that's flip-flopped in soccer. But sitting out of the World Cup, I think in this case, could really help out the Denver Nuggets and their ability to get through another grind of an NBA season, because now Jamal Murray can take this time, let his body fully recover, be ready to go. Training camp is what we're 5 weeks
month and a
out?
half,
month and a half, right? 6 weeks. We're out of training camp. So now he gets, instead of playing basketball that whole time, he can recuperate, and then be ready to go for the start of Nuggets camp.
Yeah, in general, how it works in the NBA, this will be a little bit different for the guys who play in the World Cup. But what usually happens is the guys will start reporting back to their cities and those sorts of things, and they filter in. Be ones and twos will kind of come in middle of September ish, a couple weeks ahead, and they'll probably get in the gym with the team, the guys who aren't there year round, which we are seeing more guys are making their NBA city kind of their home base and staying close by. It's usually the rookies, and then maybe your second and third year guys are there all the time. But then they'll filter in. You'll start getting thoughts of like, when we started playing pickup, player X looks really good, or he's added to his jump shot looks great, or he's
10 to 15 pounds of muscle.
That's exactly where I was going next. 10 to 15 pounds of muscle. I want just somebody to be like, dude got super fat. Like, he got really fat. He looks terrible. Like, he needs training camp.
Hurricane Harden might bring that to us. We don't know if he's still in Philly.
So in Murray's case, he'll report back to Denver and, probably, get with his team a couple weeks out of training camp opening about a month from now, probably start workouts. My guess is, I don't know that he's feeling something in the knee, but clearly something just is, whether he's just tired or whatever it may be, something doesn't feel perfect for him. And in his case, you don't want to feel, anything but perfect if you're going to commit to playing, knowing you're hoping to be on another long, finals and title run with the Nuggets coming into this coming season. I'll also say this: you said, Nuggets fans, you're 100% right. All you need to do is look at a couple of the posts, and it's Nuggets fans are like, "Phew, like we're glad, like we don't, we didn't want him to play, like we're ready to go," and that's the difference, right? If you're a Nuggets fan, you probably don't care too much about what Team Canada does. Nope. I know there's crossovers for sure, but for the most part, you're there. Now, Kristaps Porzingis, Celtics fans in the exact same boat. A lot of them are, I'm glad he's not playing. They're also snake bit because last summer, Danilo Gallinari in the European Championships tore his ACL and ended up missing the entire season. Yeah. So Porzingis, though, he is dealing with, now the Celtics have also put out a press release. He's got plantar fasciitis. They believe they have a treatment program that'll last 4 to 6 weeks, and he'll be ready right around the start of training camp, where they actually said he's expected to be ready for the start of training camp. Informally, those of us who've talked to folks with the team, myself included, have been told they're not overly worried. They feel like this is just, it's something they got to deal with, right? And get it kind of under control. And for them, it's probably a thought of, hey, if you're feeling it, but you're playing in the World Cup, you're going to feel like I got to play through it, right? And I got to go, and that could make it worse. Whereas if, let's say he's working out next week and he's like, starts to feel it, you say, all right, let's shut it down for a couple of days. There's nothing to push right now for, shut it down, and then we'll get back to it. So that's kind of the difference why you would, push through or sit out, and they're choosing to have him sit out.
Given his injury history, I think this was the only course of action,
Yeah.
because you could be risking a lot if he is. Sometimes you see this where an athlete is compensating for one injury, particularly something that is as uncomfortable as plantar fasciitis. And while that can obviously be exacerbated, it can also create other issues where you're moving a little bit differently. And next thing you know, you've got a knee problem and all that. So getting this taken care of now, particularly given his history, I think is super, super important. So this should be a sigh of relief to Celtics fans. Again, not great that it's happening at all, and maybe something to keep an eye on. Of course, this isn't a good thing, but at least as far as the NBA season is concerned, he's hopefully will get it all taken care of right now.
Yeah, a lot of people, you know how this goes covering the Lakers. Any
Sure.
Lakers news pops up and you get, a bunch of people hit you up and like, Trevor, should I be worried about this? Or
Yeah.
hey, is this a good thing? Whatever the news may be, whatever kind it is. I get the same thing with Celtics fans, and my kind of overarching thoughts was I'm not. It's not that I'm not worried about it because of his injury history. It is worrisome,
Sure.
but I'm not super worried about it because again, it's 6 weeks, and plantar fasciitis is something that can clear up in a relatively short amount of time if it goes. What I'm more worried about is what's going to happen Thanksgiving and then Christmas. And then, as we kind of move through the various tent poles on the NBA season, are different things going to keep popping up with him. And that's part of the risk you make when you make a trade like this is you're getting into business with a guy who, he's, I say it a lot, he might be a 55, 60 game per season guy at this point. And as long as those games are coming at the right time and he's healthy at the end of the season, that's probably really all that matters. But we'll see. And I would say with this too, there's been a lot of kind of, I don't know, hand wringing is the right term, but just what are the Celtics going to do? Al Horford and Robert Williams and now Porzingis, one of those guys has to come off the bench and blah, 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 blah. And I think now what you're seeing is, well, this is why you kind of have the three of them. So if any one of the three is feeling something, hey, you sit out. The other two guys will carry it for you right now and go. And we'll kind of, move it forward from there. So, for now, not super worried about it, but I am, it's something now. It's like, didn't want to kind of start this tenure with the team this way.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. All right. Another interesting situation that we've been seeing develop, restricted free agency is the bane of most NBA free agents. Maybe not for Desmond Bain, but the bane nonetheless of a lot of NBA free agents. And PJ Washington continues to be stuck in no man's land, reportedly would like a contract around $20 million. Obviously couldn't get that from anybody because he's restricted. So nobody was willing to go through even just the work of putting the contract together, right? It's a legal document. So putting a contract together and all that to send it to PJ Washington, knowing that there's no point because the Hornets are just going to match the offer. So he's still sitting out there, could wind up playing for the qualifying offer. And then that would allow him to hit unrestricted free agency next year. It's not the same. There's a lot of differences, but there's some similar feelings when the situation gets to this point with PJ Washington to kind of like the franchise tag in the NFL.
Sure.
And PJ Washington really is he's stuck. I expect him to be back with the Hornets, but the way this is progressing is feeling more and more like a kind of bet on myself and I'm going to take the qualifying offer type situation.
Yeah, anytime we get this late into the offseason and a guy hasn't signed, I start to think, all right, we're going to go the qualifying offer route, barring something emerging that we weren't expected. In his qualifying offer, about $8.5 million for him for next year. So what that would mean is he would play under that. Then the year after in 2024, he'd be an unrestricted free agent. If he signs the qualifying offer, that comes with a 1-year no trade clause. Because what happens is if he gets traded while on the qualifying offer, he loses his bird rights. The last kind of guy to be in that situation was Rodney Hood. He got traded while on the qualifying offer, and then when he was dealt, he lost his bird rights, but he wasn't playing, so he wanted to go somewhere where he's going to play and be a part of the rotation. So PJ Washington, we'll see. Miles Bridges, by the way, same boat, because even though he had all of last year, did not play and did not sign, still a restricted free agent that rolled over. And we heard very early on in free agency, there was no it sounded like what he wanted, where the Hornets were, given his entire situation. They were, pun intended, miles apart.
Right.
And they were in a spot where he just said, forget it. I'm just going to sign the qualifying offer, and then I'll go into unrestricted free agency a year from now. So PJ Washington would be in the same boat. Chris Fedor, who posted this from Cleveland.com, part of the reason why he had this story was the Cavs have been interested in a signing trade for PJ Washington. They don't have the ability to sign him to a deal that Charlotte wouldn't just match. So that's kind of out there. I don't know that anything comes together now for them on a sign and trade. There just doesn't seem to be those kind of necessarily great possibilities there. And they signed George Niang, who I think would play a very similar role to what they'd have in mind for Washington as a third big in that rotation. But that's where this story is coming from. As far as $20 million a season goes, I don't know if I know my dad and both of my grandfathers used to say this to me all the time when I would say, I wish I could, and then fill in the blank. Wish in one hand, crap in the other, see which one fills up faster. Like that was a very common phrase around our family.
I don't think I've ever heard that before.
Really? You've never heard that one before?
No.
Yeah.
That must be a Boston phrase or
Maybe.
something like that. But that's got to be it. I've never heard that one.
I cleaned it up for the podcast too, because they did not use crap. It was a different phrase there, different wording. But yeah, we'll wish in one hand, crap in the other, and see which one fills up faster. And that was basically the way of saying, get out of here with what you want, like go away. It's not going to happen. But yeah, so I mean, 20 million. It's probably slightly high for him. Again, probably in this new cap world, 16 probably makes sense. A deal that would finish around where the mid-level is going to kind of end up. So 15, 16 million starting salary. That probably makes a little bit more sense. But yeah, I don't know. I think probably qualifying offer, play it out with Charlotte, and then go from there.
Yeah, agreed. I think that's probably what the path we're going to go down here, which is going to give him all the incentive in the world to have a monster season. But it's, we see this happen every year. There's a few players where restricted free agency just really bites them. And that's maybe what's happening here with PJ Washington. All right. Last thing we've got, the schedule. It's coming out. Finally, we have the tournament. The in-season tournament schedule is already out. We've seen that came out yesterday. Now, tomorrow, we're going to get the full release of the NBA schedule, and at that point we can start circling dates on calendars and getting excited. And we've already got a number of days that, opening night, Christmas Day, we know a few other dates. It wouldn't shock me, Keith, if a few other dates start trickling out today, tomorrow, even a little bit. But it sounds like the NBA is trying to really make this schedule release like a thing, and so I'd imagine they're probably going to be staring daggers at any media members that start to release info, at least too much info. So it wouldn't shock me if we do wind up, well, we might hear a few things if it ends up being kind of everything gets released, at what time is it? 3:00 Eastern time tomorrow? Is that right?
Yeah, it was either 2 or 3. It was one of the two. Yeah.
But so it's coming. It's coming, which is great because we can start getting excited for all these different games.
Sure. In general, schedule releases in most of the pro sports, I'm kind of like, meh about. Like, in football, you kind of, all right, how many Monday night games, how many Sunday night games, Thursdays, and all that. The things I look for in the NBA schedule, obviously Christmas Day, the openers, what does the closing stretch look like?
Yes.
Like, what is it from kind of mid-March through the end of April? Where are we at with that? For the coastal teams, I always look at, all right, how much are they doing the 2 road trips, 3 road trips? Like, what do they look like? Last year, Boston had a really goofy road trip where they went from I think it was Toronto to Houston to Minnesota to Utah to it was just weird. Like, they went up north and south and all the way out to the West Coast. So I always look at kind of those. Where are those on the schedule? But for the most part, everybody, you kind of know what your schedule is. You have those couple conference teams you're only going to play 3 times for each team, and then everybody else you'll play 4. And those rotate year over year. So I don't get super well, what does the matchups look like? Because those things we all kind of know.
Right.
But then it's I wait until, because people now have all these tools, and I wait till they feed them all in on back-to-backs and rest
Yes.
games and all that stuff. So I wait for all that to all come
Air
out
miles
and
traveled.
give us. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. But mostly why I want this is how I start planning out the, that 6-month period of life, between mid-October and mid-April for the regular season. And I literally put every game into my calendar, and I just kind of go through it, and then I start it'll be different this year because I'm not covering the Celtics directly for the first time in 6 seasons. So I'm not necessarily locked in on having to watch every Celtics game. I probably still will, but I plug in and, all right, these are games I want to try to watch each night and try to balance it. So I'm seeing every team in an approximately even amount of time and all those things. So that's what gets me excited, is I can start planning it all out.
Yeah. Yeah. It's fun to get to look ahead and see, okay, are they playing on Halloween? Right. Like that's something I always look for.
Yeah.
What do
Yeah.
what do the MLK Day games look like?
Yes. MLK is a big one.
Yep.
MLK honestly should get as much like pub for the NBA as Christmas does. Like, they've turned it into almost
It really has.
as big of a day on the calendar. I think last year, if I remember it, I think everybody played, or maybe it was the year before, but they try to get everybody in there, and there's games all day long. I'll look for that too. Saturday and Sunday matinees. Like, when do we have afternoon games and those kind of things in there? But yeah, MLK. I'm very curious too. They believe they already confirmed they're going to take election night off again.
Yeah.
I think they're making that now like a permanent thing that they do. But do they do what they did last year, where the night before they started a game every 15 minutes? And that was, too, the NBA is very good about, let's try something, right? Let's test it. And if that, on nights when we're super full, staggering all the start times really works out well. I thought it was great because then you could kind of pop in and see the end of a whole bunch of games that were close. So I thought that was a cool night, the way they did that. So I'm curious to see if they do that again as well.
And then, do we know what day the trade deadline is yet? Is that
we do. It is. I can tell you, it is. I believe,
because I always looked as you're looking this up. I always look to see what games are taking place right before the trade deadline, because those can also those can be a factor. If a guy's in trade talks, sometimes they'll get held out that the game before or whatever. So that's always something that I look for as well. Is what games are coming up right before the trade deadline.
Well, that's why I wouldn't find it. So last year was February 9th.
Right. It's usually that first week of February.
Yeah. Let's see. There was a way you could look it up. They had it. I think it's either. I thought I saw somebody say. I believe it is this coming year. I think it's that second, because I think it's the 8th of February. I think it's like that second Thursday of the month.
Let's see.
Because it's always right before All-Star. I don't think
that's funny. The NBA has a post out called Key Dates.
Yep.
And they don't have it on here. They have the All-Star.
Yeah, they rarely ever put it on the key date.
Yeah. But it's because it's the 16th through the 18th, but I don't see the actual deadline.
When is All-Star? When's the All-Star break?
February 16th through 18th.
Yeah, so I think it's that week before. I think it's the 8th.
Which makes sense.
That's when I believe it is. So
yeah.
I mean, and it was funny. I had some folks too, just in case people are still confused about this a little bit. And I was asked about this on a radio appearance today. Was like, did the NBA do the right thing with adding these extra games for the tournament? And I was like, whoa, they only added a couple extra games. These games that you just got the schedule for yesterday, meaning Tuesday, as we record this on Wednesday, those are not extra games. Those are games that just double count. They're tournament games plus regular season games. So they're games with a little extra added importance. We'll see if teams and players feel that way. We'll find out. But that's the idea behind it. They did not add 5 extra games to everybody's schedule. That was not a thing. And I think there's still some confusion, which is probably not great for the NBA. And
because that's most people's problems.
Right.
Why are you adding games on?
Yeah, we just haven't done a great job explaining it. So we'll continue to hit on that and explain it as we go. But the only extra games are once they get into the tournament portions of this.
And it's just the championship, I think. That's the extra, right?
Was it the championship and the semifinals? See, it's not great, right? We don't even know for certain. So I think it might be the semifinals and the tournament. are extra, but we'll see.
I was approaching it as though it was like the World Cup where top 2 seeds advance from the group. And then I went and looked at it and went, oh no, wait, it's actually top seed from every group, and then there's one wild card per conference.
One per conference. Yep.
Per conference. Yeah. So I like I said, we need to get a better understanding of exactly how this is all going to run, and what happens in the event of a tie in terms of records and all that kind of stuff. So,
and I don't know if they've said once you get to the semifinals, is it gonna be let's see. Now I'm on the NBA page and reading it. Is it going to be East and West, or are the brackets? It doesn't actually say. So we'll see. I guess
we're learning on the fly here, everybody.
Yeah.
We're learning on the fly with all of this.
Yeah, and that's part of this, right? Is what we'll all be kind of figuring this out. But in the group stage, it is only it's done by conference, and it's each of the two groups, two conferences. Each have 3 groups. In the 3 groups, they're games you would have played anyway. So, like in the Celtics group, they have games against, I believe it's Orlando and Chicago. I'm certain are in their group. Those 2 teams, they would have played those 2 teams anyway. This game just double counts when they play them as a regular season game and a tournament game.
That's right. But all of that we'll know tomorrow. Schedule is going to release, and then we can start circling that calendar. But all right, Keith, I think we got through everything. We made it through. We weathered the storm of Hurricane Harden so far. We'll see if we're going to get hit by the eye of the hurricane. Is that coming? We'll find out what's next in this whole saga. But thank you, everybody, for joining us. Make sure you do subscribe to the NBA Front Office channel here on YouTube, over on the podcast side as well. It's a great way to help out the show, the algorithms, all that kind of stuff. The best way you can help out the show, it's like the show on YouTube, subscribe, turn on notifications, and then give us those ratings and reviews. And of course, follow the show as well over on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you listen to podcasts. That's a big help to us here at the Front Office Show. But thank you, everybody. We'll be back with more NBA basketball to talk about tomorrow. Till then, see ya and stay safe.